Hello and welcome everyone to really the actual first Rev Limit Podcast. We had a short intro one when the site launched, and now we're actually going to try and do it for real. I'm Anthony, kind of be helping to lead through the discussion here, and also joining me is Bryan Carey.
Hello everyone.
And Corey Davis.
Howdy folks.
So we have a pretty interesting opening podcast lined up for you. We're going to start off with the segment Opening Lap, where we take you through some of the races that are just happened and some of the things that are upcoming. We're going to take a little look at some upcoming and released sim racing titles, which are actually looking pretty interesting. We'll go through a lightning round here for the F1 team, since they're kind of in the break as they transition to Europe, and we'll take a look at how some of the teams are doing and the ones that aren't doing so well. And then we'll go through some of the upcoming races and some of the races that are going to be happening within the next couple weeks or so, and kind of give some thoughts and maybe a few predictions on that. So, Corey, you're going to take us through the opening lap. Let's hear it.
That's right, and we'll start off in Belgium on Saturday. The second round of the World Endurance Championship season headed to Spa. It was all Porsche in qualifying for the LMP1 class. They took the top three spots over half a second faster than the fastest Audi. So Porsche was on their game, but early on, the third Porsche entry, the number 19 car driven by Nick Tandy, had contact with one of their GT Porsches at Fagnes. Some shades of the 24 Hours of Daytona this year when the two GT Porsches came together. However, the 19 would continue in the race. Audi was looking strong though. They had a new front-end configuration, a little bit lower drag package for this one. Finally let them compete against Porsche on the long straightaways, and in fact we saw a great pass by Benoit Chaillouet over Mark Lieb on the outside at Fagnes. Then late in the race, that great Porsche versus Audi duel from Silverstone continued. Audi made a little bit later last pit stop, and Porsche beat them out of the pits, and they won their second straight race of the season. Really an incredible race, an incredible start to the season. So, guys, as we head into Le Mans, which team is the favorite for the overall win there?
Personally, I'm going to have to... Audi has been very strong. They've won the first two rounds here, but I've also found that what happens in the first couple of races doesn't always translate to Le Mans, and they did introduce a low downforce setup. It did look like it was working well at Spa, but Le Mans is a totally different ball game, and reliability concerns aside, and also concerns about drivers driving into other cars in the first hour of the race, I think Porsche has a pretty good shot at it this year.
Actually, I find that quite surprising, considering that they've only just kind of reintroduced themselves into the game. Obviously, they've been, fairly successful there with their Porsche program, their GT program, but only the second year as they're back into prototypes, they're looking really strong. I was actually really surprised with the quote-unquote low drag configuration of the Audi. If you kind of actually take a look at it, it's almost a different looking car. The nose is way different. They changed some of the aero elements towards the rear and on the sides. So I think that's probably the most dramatic change I've seen a team take, and it definitely helped, but the hybrid system on that Porsche is just pretty crazy. And
yeah,
man, poor Toyota. I feel bad for them. I really want them to win the race, but so far, I mean, they've had they showed a little bit of promise at points at Silverstone, but it's just still don't seem like they're quite there yet.
Yeah, no, it's
so Audi. Do they always bring their game especially for the 24 Hours of Le Mans? Does Audi have any big concerns with their own package, or Porsche will definitely be fast there? Is that their big concern just in their competition?
Against Porsche, yes. I think when they introduced their the hybrid system, they seem to kind of struggle in that department for whatever reason. Even against Toyota's always kind of had the leg up in that department since they started their entry into the WEC and the conquest for Le Mans. But as far as I can think of, Audi's kind of always lagged behind in the hybrid department a little bit. They're really strong in other places. Their power package is usually really reliable and kind of the strongest of the two, now three entries. But and they're always, the rest of the car is usually pretty reliable. But Porsche really seems to have figured out their hybrid system, and combined with their kind of lower drag of their car, seems to be really kind of overtaking what Audi is able to, the amount they're able to, kind of the speed they're able to make up by being reliable and being consistent and things like that. It doesn't, of course, it is different once you get to Le Mans. Porsche has had problems in the race with mechanical problems in their races, so there's always that factor that if you kind of go for pure all-out speed and your car isn't reliable, like Audis usually are, then you could hand the race off to Audi, whatever Audi it might be. But I don't know, this Porsche might have so much speed that if they can get far enough ahead, it won't matter.
Yeah, my thing is with Audi is they've been there so many times and they know exactly what to do. Is the impression I got from Spa was, and I haven't honestly seen all of Silverstone yet, but the impression I got from Spa was Porsche, all things being equal, and it looks like they can be reliable, they should be able to take Le Mans. However, Audi's been there, they've done that, they have the experience, and if they have a sniff of the win, they have a chance to win, they'll find a way to do it. I don't think Porsche has that institutional know-how, if you will, an institution, like they don't know Le Mans yet. They've been there, they've put a lot of resources in it, they have the people, that experience, but it's just not, it's Audi's race to lose, I think.
Yeah, Audi's got that commitment to those long endurance races, I think, that makes them the favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So, talked a little about LMP1. I want to quickly turn to the GTE Pro class. So far, Ferrari and Aston Martin have each won in their class in the opening 2 rounds. You guys think either of them has an advantage going forward in the season, and maybe who's the favorite there for Le Mans as well?
I like the Aston Martins look better.
To be honest, WEC the last few years has not been about the GT battle. It's really had that focus on the manufactured prototypes. And if I wanted to see great GT action, I would watch Blancpain. But usually Le Mans is kind of a step above what you see in the races either before or after Le Mans. So right now, Ferraris are always going to be there. They have a really great package with that 458 GTE car. It's not as good in a GT3 config, but that depends on BOP and all that. I really think that Aston Martin has been there in the past. They've kind of been there. They've had problems with accidents and things like that. We just had that death not that few years ago, which was very unfortunate. But I personally think that the Ferrari has an advantage going into Le Mans, but with the GT cars, you never can really be too sure. I mean, we've seen those flip and flop multiple times throughout the 24 hours, so that's a really hard class to predict.
I was just saying that. I mean, we haven't. Most years, you can't get through a Le Mans race without someone running into a Ferrari running into someone.
That's true.
Like, they are always there, but. Assuming the similar driver lineups between the two cars that I've seen, it looks like Ferrari's probably got a stronger driver lineup as far as experience in various types of races and whatnot at the top end. But you're going to have to kind of count on your top end drivers being in the car that mechanically and holds together for the race, because so many different things can happen, especially in the slower class and the GT classes. You're really at the mercy of the prototypes, both P1s and P2s, coming through, and if they just happen to catch it at a wrong time in their own battle, it gets taken out of their hands. So driver skill, I would say Ferrari. I'd say the car, the Aston Martin, probably at Le Mans has a slight advantage, but in all honesty, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. I mean, it's going to be one of those two. I don't think Porsche has a shot at the GT side of it.
And by sheer numbers, it seems like AF Corsa usually represents about half the GT cars at Le Mans. So just by that alone, seems like they might be the favorite. So we'll head through turn 1 here on the opening lap into turn 2. Indy 500 testing started last weekend, a little bit earlier than we normally see cars on track at the Speedway. A little bit different schedule this year to give them some practice time with their new oval configurations. So early on in practice, we saw speeds hit 221, 222. Last year's opening day speeds were about 223 miles an hour. We busted way past that last weekend. Pagenaud at 225, and then his teammate Montoya hit the fastest lap of the day, 226.772 miles per hour. Elio Castroneves was second in that session. And then overall in the top 7 cars, you had 4 Chevys and 3 Hondas, so maybe a little bit better balance than we've seen so far. So, guys, after seeing the speeds that we're already seeing on this test day, how fast are they going to go when pole day comes at Indianapolis?
This is going to be very weather dependent.
230. 230. That's what it's going to be.
You're 230?
Yep, 230.
235.
No, I'd say 235. They were 230 last year, so this is day one on the new. This isn't even the Indy 500 testing. They just added this test day ahead of the Grand Prix because of the new aero kits, and this is the first chance they've had to test these new aero kits outside of the manufacturer trials. So it's going to be, like I say, weather dependent. They were talking possibly if the stars align, they get the right weather conditions, track temperature, air temperature, get the engines really going. They could be pushing Lyondike's 237. They could be pushing that, but I would probably bet to see pole at 234, high 234, low 235.
Now, in your opinion, do those higher speeds make for any better racing? In other words, does that 237 matter at all?
Yes. With racing, the 237, because this is going to be qualifying, and this is what they've been doing for for the longest time now. Like the last time we had a truly open Indy 500 was 1995. And even then it had started to be severely restricted. So call it 1994, which I think, even though I know 96 was the fastest time, but that was the first year of the IRL, and they just took the current cars and they boosted the hell out of them. The racing, they detuned the engines for the race. This is a qualifying boost. They give a special boost for qualifying. The absolute speed in the racing, you don't notice when it's racing. Like you want the car to be kind of difficult to drive, but sadly we've reached a point where if we had them as difficult to drive as they used to be with the amount of grip that's available at pretty much any speed, the cars would be doing 330 miles an hour, and that's just obviously physically not safe at all. So in the race, it will make difference. They'll be doing 215, 220 laps, probably 220 laps in the race, especially towards the end there, and you're not going to notice that. But in qualifying, that's myself growing up watching the qualifying. The whole thing with the Indy 500 is watching them push the boundaries, going for that track record, and we've been nearly 20 years since we've come anywhere close to Lyondike's track record, like his qualifying record. So I'm looking forward to them inching up to that, and that's what makes qualifying exciting. As for the race, the only difference will be not the speeds, just the battle between the two manufacturers.
So no matter how fast they are for the pole, do you think it's possible or even likely that we'll see the Penske cars? There's 4 of them there. Do you think we'll see them sweep the front row?
For qualifying?
Yep.
Sure, possible, but the thing with Indianapolis and even with these new aero kits and Honda's, we'll call it perceived disadvantage from the first few road course races. It's hard to tell how much of that is aero kit, how much of that is engine or whatnot. I would say it's probably mostly aero kit. However, with the super speedway configuration, and I'll be honest, Andretti's success since the new DW12 has come out, I would say it would be nearly impossible for Penske to sweep the front row with the Andretti cars out there too. I'd say it'd be more likely when it comes down to it, you'd see an Andretti front row before you'd see a Penske front row.
So there's a lot of different one-off team efforts for the 500. One that's interesting to me is Connor Daly and for Schmidt-Peterson Racing. Last year he finished 22nd running for AJ Foyt. So what's a reasonable expectation for Connor Daly, and what's probably the best IndyCar equipment he's ever been in now in his second 500?
Actually, I'm going to chime in on this one here too. I believe it was 2013 was his first one. I don't think he ran last year. I don't think he had a chance. Am I wrong here? I thought it was 2013 he ran.
Yeah, I'll give or take a year on that one. I think you're right, Brian.
Okay, but this is the thing with Connor Daly, and this is what I'm not yet convinced that Connor Daly is who they say he is. He's had success. He's an American that's had success in Europe in GP3. He had no success at all in GP2, to which I will admit he was not in a good situation team-wise there, and that's a super competitive series,
Yep.
and he really didn't have a shot in GP2. He had some success in Indy Lights. He's done okay in testing, and he is a good driver, but the quality of drivers in IndyCar is so high. I don't think he's honestly any more than a successful midfield guy. I mean, like, he has a shot like anyone else. I mean, the series is so tight, and things could happen. Schmidt-Peterson could put a good car together for him, but I don't think he's going to factor on Memorial Day weekend. It's just
Yeah, and just kind of in general, if you think of other one-off teams that are in other series, whether it be kind of the Daytona 500 in NASCAR or teams that the one-off teams that race at Le Mans or something like that, generally you aren't seeing them perform all that well. Sometimes you'll get a good performer. I know that the Alpine team sometimes sneaks in various European races and will have a great performance, but those are kind of rare, and it seems to come down to the teams that are regularly racing in a series and kind of know the ins and outs of the car and the equipment and the way the racing is, and their drivers are more familiar with how races unfold and things like that. So something that's mostly a lot of strategy that goes into oval racing kind of means that to do well, you probably need to be actively racing in it more than just a one-off.
Yeah, well, at least Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports at least has the cars. They have two cars that they regularly run. This will be a third car. So the team itself, I feel, has got the pedigree. We're not talking like Dreyer Reinbold or I honestly don't remember the other teams that are coming in on a legit one-off basis. But also, that being said, I don't think Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports historically has had a lot of success at Indianapolis. So I don't know. We'll see. He's going to be feeding off of we have James Hinchcliffe, who's through Andretti, and I'm gonna, as much as I love Hinch, I think most of Hinch's speed and whatnot in the 500 recently has come from Andretti and not from himself directly. So, I mean, he might be able to provide some feedback that him and Daly can feed off of. James Jakes in the car, and the other car really doesn't bring anything to the table for me to help them. I mean, he's another car making up the time, and he's a fine driver, but I don't think he's a plus in their column. So it might work out for him, but like I say, it's just Connor Daly is one driver in a large pool of drivers, and there is nothing in particular that I've seen thus far to suggest that he's going to make an impact come the end of May.
Well, while we wait for Brian to find the real Connor Daly, let's head down the backstretch here on the opening lap. You better get in a single file line, fellas, because we're talking NASCAR at Talladega. Of course, it's known as the race on the schedule that anyone can win because it's full throttle and in the big pack, and there's always a big wreck. And there was a big wreck in this one. It was a little bit earlier than we usually see on lap 47. Several cars got sideways on the backstretch, took each other out. About a half a dozen cars were involved. But the real story up front in this one was Jeff Gordon and his Hendrick Motorsports teammates. Gordon won the pole by 0.3 of a second, which is unheard of at a track like this, and he had the speed early on. Dale Earnhardt Jr. led laps, Jimmy Johnson led laps early. So it came down to basically the Hendrick cars in the final laps. Gordon had a speeding penalty on pit road at the last stop, so that pretty much took him out of contention. But Dale Jr. led, Jimmy Johnson was second, and no one could pass. Everyone was in a single file line running right around the top of the track, even coming down to 2 laps to go. Cars were having a hard time making a move, so in the end, no big surprise, Dale Jr. won at Talladega. He's the crown prince at that Coliseum there. So I want to ask you guys, I know you're not huge NASCAR fans, but is it better for NASCAR that Dale Jr. won, or worse for NASCAR that there was so much pretty boring single-file racing at the end of this one?
I think Dale Jr. winning outweighs any sort of boringness of racing. I know enough about NASCAR. I don't watch it regularly, so the ins and outs of the more recent goings on, I mean, obviously I can't speak to, but I mean, I've been following, if you will, NASCAR for as long as I've been following racing. And the thing with NASCAR that I think I've come to realize, and I think a lot of people realize, is they are more than anything. They market their drivers and their personalities so much, and there is no bigger name still in the series than Dale Earnhardt Jr. in particular in this case. So it could have been Dale Earnhardt Jr. lapping the field 3 times in a rocket car, which if that happened, I'm pretty sure the place would have gone nuts. Like just rocket car flying by Dale Jr., people would have been losing their minds. The quality of the actual racing there, and somewhere like Talladega and Daytona to an extent, but Talladega in particular, because it's bigger, it's more highly banked, it is more. What's the word? It's like watching high-speed cars on a highway when you're watching them, following the camera around, because the amount of movement and the speed differential for the cars is so minimal that there's 2 things that happen. The passing on it is not exciting. It's hoping your driver gets to the front. The actual act of someone passing, if you find that pass exciting as he inches past them, going 1 lap and then the next lap, I don't think that's where it's at. I think it's cheering your guy on. It is interesting the way, because you don't know what's going to happen. There could be a crash. There could be whatever. You are cheering for the result on those restrictor plate races. I don't, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, but I don't think you're cheering for the racing. I think you're cheering for the result.
At a super speedway like Talladega.
Yeah. Yes. And all tracks too, but other tracks have a little bit more like kind of door to door, like Bristol or short tracks. But yeah, like I'll throw it over to Corey, but I think that's more the result than the actual racing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's definitely artificial. It's manufactured racing. That's not to say it's bad racing. In a lot of cases, it's some of the best we'll see. In this case, it wasn't. So brings me to my next question about this. And mind you, this is coming for the series that brought you the great radical changes of double file restarts and green, white, checker finishes. Anthony, do you think in a case like this, it wouldn't be a bad idea to throw a caution with 10 laps to go, bunch the field back up, and basically force everyone into 2 separate lines?
Well, actually, I feel like please tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they've actually done something like that before, like a competition yellow or something like that, right?
Usually those come pretty early in the race.
Okay.
And NASCAR will announce them ahead of time, but it's not outside the realm of possibility,
Right.
I'd say, that we could see some of it.
Okay.
And who knows, we may have already seen it, because a lot of times they'll have debris cautions.
Mm-hmm.
Necessarily the debris isn't on the track, so maybe that's
Right.
sort of what they're going for. In this case, it could be, and this is the conspiracy theorist in me talking, that Dale Jr.'s out front, they don't want to ruin that. So
No competition yellow, right. Well, see, that was my point, that there's just been, in the past, there's been precedent set that, to give the fans more action to watch on track, we'll throw a questionable for full course yellow and get the cars close up. To me, I don't really find that, like in, say, a different series, like Formula One or WEC, I would find that to be kind of out of the realms of something you should be doing. That's not sporting, in my opinion, for those series. But with NASCAR, it's really, like Bryan mentioned, it's kind of like they really market their drivers and the cars, and it takes the actual racing, with the exception of like bumping and kind of like rough racing, kind of takes a back seat to kind of promote this spectator sport almost. So at least this is my perception of it. And so personally, I think that if you are really having a really dull race and you're getting towards the end, especially like a big race, and Talladega is one of the, if you don't know NASCAR racing, chances are you've at least heard of Talladega. I don't personally follow NASCAR that closely. I know what the Talladega race is all about. So
thank you, Will Ferrell.
But yeah, so I think that's for that type of sport, I definitely think that is a valid option to, give the last 10 laps or so, make them more exciting, especially if you haven't had all that much action going throughout the rest of the race.
In my point of view on this one here, that just kind of follow up really quickly, is I don't think throwing a caution in the race would have, the only thing it would have done is possibly caused an accident. I think at Talladega and at Daytona, they'd make changes to the cars that kind of either promote, pack racing or spread things out a little bit. I think just the way the cars were for Talladega, I don't think throwing a caution would have made the racing any better. It might have caused a crash because you bunched people up a little bit more than they were. But I think they kind of found their natural, like it's packed up enough already, typically. So I don't think throwing a caution in that case, if it wasn't packed up, would have done anything for
But-
the racing other than increase the risk to just a little bit at the end.
Right, but then you can also say, well, that's half of the reason that people watch is because of the rough racing and the crashes that result from that. So, you know, again,
Yeah, after watching Carl Larson go through the fence at Daytona a couple years ago in the whatever the
well, I'm not saying they should
Live.
do that, but you know, that is a part of the reason that a lot of people watch NASCAR. They like to see the crashes. So,
fair enough.
Well, we'll move on from Ricky Bobby to Laguna Seca. That's where the Tudor United Sports Car Championship visited on Sunday. In qualifying, it was all Daytona prototypes in the top 3 spots. Jordan Taylor beat Scott Pruitt for the pole. The number 90 Visit Florida Corvette was in 3rd. Top-running P2 type car was the Mike Shank Leger in 4th place. Early on, one of the Daytona prototypes had problems. The Ganassi Racing number 01 car had a gearbox problem, so that set up a pretty exciting battle near the end between the number 10 and the number 90. Richard Westbrook got in the car for the 90, made it just ahead of Taylor out of the pits on the last stop. Was able to use traffic to his advantage and pull away, but not by much. And then Oz Negri had a pretty good drive in the number 60 car to wind up in 3rd. Also in the GT Le Mans class, there was pretty much a runaway by the BMW Z4s. They took the top 2 spots, and this is coming off their win at Long Beach. So one sort of concern going into this weekend is that they had all 4 classes on the same track at the same time in a pretty tight track like Laguna Seca. Last year they had done split races, so this year only 2 cautions. I guess a lot of the fears were averted. So do you guys think it's a good idea to have all 4 of those classes
Yes.
at pretty similar speeds within, say, 10 seconds of each other in the race together?
I'm going to go out and start right away and say yes, because the race last year was pretty dull, to be honest. I really didn't like the way they split. I get their safety concerns and all of that, but was not a fan. Granted, also I should say, full disclosure, that I am also extremely critical of this series. I don't like a lot of the things that they are doing. But that said, I am glad that they put all of the cars together for this one, and it can be a little risky when some of the cars are, they're not extremely faster than one another, but it also, as long as the drivers are professional and they know what they're doing, that similar speed can also make close battles interesting, because it's easier to use them as a pick. You don't have cars, you don't have an LMP1 car flying by 6 or 7 cars on a straightaway and not giving a chance for a slower car to possibly follow one of those fast cars through. So personally, I think that was the right move.
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion on that, because I don't follow this particular series that closely outside of the Daytona 24. The one thing I will say, though, is you talk about it being at Laguna Seca with all 4 classes there, it makes me touch sad that this is the best road racing we're going to see at Laguna Seca this year. As far as, when I say best, I mean like the highest level series. So it's kind of I'm not familiar with. It's a tight track, so I'm putting the same 4 classes that they had at Daytona, I guess is what you're talking about, on Laguna Seca. I imagine it would be more interesting than the 2 classes, but it's just it's not a series that I know a ton about.
Well, last year it was the prototype class, which was the LMP2 cars and the Daytona prototypes, and the GT Le Mans cars. And then the other race was the whatever the small prototypes are called. The name
Prototype Challenge.
That's it. Thank you, Corey. And then the Daytona, GT Daytona cars. So, I mean, you weren't.
Yeah, and it seemed like I think I remember when they announced those races, they wanted basically a non-prototype to be able to take an overall win. So one of the prototype challenge cars could get a win and get some publicity or attention for that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't necessarily think that happened. And then I was at the PC standalone race at VIR, and I'll go ahead and say there was basically no buzz about the prototype challenge series in that race.
This is the thing. I've never ever seen anyone excited about that class when it was before the 2 series merged. I didn't think anyone was excited about that class, and they kept it after the merge, and I don't think anyone is excited about it. They still have it. I still don't think anyone is excited about it. And I get
who's driving in it.
Well, this is the thing. They use it as like a they try to use it as like a feeder class into the faster prototypes. I don't really think that happens. When I was following it closely with the American Le Mans series, the people that were in the PC class stayed in the PC class, and the people that were in the higher prototype classes generally stuck around there. I didn't really see that much crossover. I never, that I can remember, saw a team go from Prototype Challenge to LMP2. So I don't really see the use there.
Yeah, I only remember really one time where it looked promising for that class, at least in the current Tudor series, and that was right at the very beginning last year, whenever they were about to announce all the entry, basically the full season entry list. And at first, apparently they had lots of entries from Prototype Challenge. Lots of teams are attracted to that idea of a spec class.
Yeah, and it's cheap. It's easy to get in.
Grid.
Yeah, but I actually remember the opening race they had at Daytona. There was a decent amount of cars in that class, but it also seemed to be the least professional in that series. The opening race for that series, I thought it made them this. I thought it really kind of took away from the credibility of that. The racing series as a whole, because cars were spinning out for no reason or getting into contact with GT cars, and it looked unprofessional to me.
Yeah, in both years that series has run the Rolex 24 now, the overall GT Le Mans winner has beat the overall Prototype Challenge winner, so that certainly doesn't say a lot about, I guess, the cars or the drivers that run in that class.
Yeah.
So we're going to head into Turn 4 on the opening lap now with some news from the last week. The draft 2016 Formula One calendar was leaked. FIA basically came out and said, yes, this is our proposal. It hasn't been finalized, but a few changes on the calendar. For one, the season will start a little bit later next year if it's approved. The Australian Grand Prix will still be the opener, but it'll be held on April 3rd instead of at the end of March. Also, the Russian Grand Prix would move a little bit earlier. It'll go from October to May and sort of switch with the Malaysian Grand Prix, which would go from early in the season to September. Would be one race added in Azerbaijan and Baku, titled, strangely, the European Grand Prix. And also Hockenheim would be on the calendar for next year, again, as the host of the German Grand Prix. So all in all, 21 races. Guys, is there any chance we'll actually see 21 Formula One races next year?
Minimal, I would say.
Well, if they couldn't work out the race in Germany this year, I doubt they could do it 21 race season next year.
Well, so I feel... What's that?
Yeah, so if that's the case, then what race is most likely to get cut?
Well, that's the thing is, I feel that Germany next year will go ahead because they'll have time to figure that out. They'll want to have something done there. This year, I feel it caught people by surprise, the issues that were... not surprised. Obviously they knew the issues, but I think it kind of happened a little late in the day for them to do anything about it. That being said, I feel they'll make an effort to have a German race next year. The Baku race, I don't know what money is going into that, so that kind of seems questionable. I know they have the facility. I assume it's the same track as the Blancpain, or are they going to be... No,
because that race, well, I guess it could. That race on a road circuit, which I actually found really interesting, but I definitely don't think it's suitable for F1. There were some... I guess if you wanted to try and run it, it would be kind of akin to Le Mans, or not Le Mans, excuse me, Monaco, because there is some very, very tight sections in there. There were also some big crashes in there with the GT cars, and I think it could be an interesting race, but I don't think they'll use that one.
Yeah. Well, sorry, Gord.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just going to say that to answer the question, it is a street circuit in Baku, but it is not the Blancpain street circuit. It's a 3.766 mile track designed by none other than Herman Tilke. So unlike a lot of his tracks, I don't think it's going to have ample runoff in really long straightaways followed by hairpins, but maybe we'll be surprised.
I would like to know what rich oil prince is funneling money into Baku to hold these races, personally.
I think it's probably a Russian gangster, actually.
Oh, that could be.
So, in the Middle East, rich prince, Russian gangsters. I
they're interchangeable,
Place.
Yeah.
Sadly, yes. No, it just when I see schedules like that, and I see, Baku, they're going for the 21 races on the schedule. I bet we'll see closer to 19 or 20 at the end of the day. It still makes me sad from those years of having the potential New Jersey Grand Prix with the Manhattan skyline in the background on what I still think would have been probably the best street course in the world. It was first of all, the location was amazing, like as far as trying to open up to an American market, like using Manhattan as kind of the backdrop there, but also having been to where the track was proposed, and I'd seen what was there. The elevation changes, the only track on the F1 calendar, street or road, that would have had the same elevation changes was Spa, and only by a little bit. Like, that's what we're talking about. Would have been a ridiculously awesome street circuit, no Tilka, no whatever. It's just taking what was there, what was designed, using the natural terrain, streets that people drive on, and just every time I see the new calendar for something like Baku, it's like, okay, Tilka designed all these new tracks. It makes me keep thinking back to that and having it on the calendars, and then just never seeing it.
I really think they need to go back and try harder to get that race organized, because it is kind of like a prime spot to hold a race. I mean, one, there's a lot of money in that area. I mean, you're close to New York and all of that, so a lot of money that people are willing to spend, especially if you don't have to. If you can offer the kind of a similar prestigious experience to like Monaco or something, which you can get in New York.
Well, yes, in a way, but I'll point out that Monaco is through the Principality, by the casino, by this. That would have been in Weehawken, and the backdrop would have looked amazing. There's no way you could get the same Monaco feel for that.
Oh no. But I mean, I'm saying it would be kind of like another equivalent to, or something similar to that you could offer to, rich Americans or rich people from Canada or Mexico or something like that. Some rich people in the North American and South American market, and that can you can use that as a way to kind of quote unquote finance it, and then you can and then the normal spectators like myself and you guys would benefit by having a race there.
I think if F1 really wanted to do that, at least in the North American market, and I know we've taken this draft 2016 calendar and took a nice left turn on this one, but I think F1 would go back to Long Beach for that. To get that, to go back to Long Beach. Like when you talk about like Monaco, I mean, you have the Prince of Monaco, like it's Prince Albert. It's a big event there. If they did it, there, great event. But I mean, the Prince of Weehawken is a guy in a tank top that runs a garage down the street. Like, it's not going to be it's a different feel. It'd be an awesome, but it would be a different feel.
Well, hopefully we won't take the left turn onto pit road, because we're almost done with the opening lap here. In fact, we're crossing the line now. Great discussion there, and now Anthony will give us a sim racing update on a couple upcoming titles.
Yeah, this week we are finally seeing the release of Project Cars, which was basically a crowdfunded racing. I'm going to call it a simcade for short, like a simulated arcade type game. Basically, they went for a, quote, authentic feel, end quote, to their game, rather than a full-on simulation like you might see with something like Assetto Corsa or iRacing or R-Factor, something of that nature. One of the things that kind of really appeals to me with that game is, one, it doesn't take that much effort to be proficient in driving a car around, and so you can have fast racing. Also is the variety of cars that they have. I'm just looking through some of the cars and locations, I should say. A lot of these are licensed cars. Some of them are unlicensed, but they're very easily to tell what car they are. They have a wide variety of road cars. They have karts, if you're into that, track day cars, and then they have supercars. I mean, you can't really have a kind of a simcade racing game without supercars, but then they've got like things like the Le Mans prototypes. So they have the officially licensed Audi R18, which was the of course the Le Mans winning car, not the hybrid. It's the before they went to that, the full-on diesel engine. And they also have a couple fantasy LMP1 cars to race against it, which were actually designed by the community, which is pretty cool. They have LMP2 cars to go along with that. I think they have, I want to say they actually have the real Ligier chassis, but I'm not sure about that. But they do have, a few different versions of that. And they have GT cars. They have a number of GT3 cars, like the McLaren MP412C, which is actually now outdated, but we'll skip over that. The Audi R8 LMS, which is now also outdated because they have a new version. And the BMW Z4, which is not outdated, but it will be soon. So there you go, guys. There's your first DLC pack you can produce. Oh, and the Mercedes SLS. So, and then of course they've got the modern open wheels, which is Formula One, and I believe they have the Formula 2 car, things like that. So yeah, there's a massive list of cars here. Oh, Aston Martin GT cars, GT3 and GT4. Huge list. So there it is. You guys interested in playing it?
I am, and this is what I'm going to look at. I don't know if you guys remember or not, and this is going back, probably about 10 years, but what this is reminding me of is Toka Race Driver 2 in particular. And Toka Race Driver 2, it came out about the same time as the first Forza Motorsport. So we're talking original Xbox type titles. Yeah. So what was great about that game was it had a career mode, almost like a play-it-along story, which I don't think Project Cars has specifically, but they do have a certain career. Like I have seen what Project Cars career mode is like. It's not exactly the Toka 2 experience, but similar, where you can jump in, you can start at the bottom of your ladder, start at cars, you can run races, you can move up. It feels, like you said, the authentic experience as opposed to a pure simulation. Mm-hmm. I believe the cars will feel like you're driving a real car. The feel will be fine. You won't have that engineering aspect and that pure simulation. You won't be able to jump into, say the Audi R18 or whatever like that, and then go into the real one and be like, oh, geez, I know what kind of setup changes I want to make here. I know how this will feel. Yeah. It'll feel fast, and it'll feel like a real car, and it'll look good, and it'll feel good, but it won't be that sort of level. But if they do everything right, and my computer, for instance, can handle it, which I'm still questioning right now.
It can. It just might not look as shiny as some other computers.
Yeah. I'm sure it can do it, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. And that's the thing, too, is they've really hyped up the graphics of this and how it looks, like the rain effects, the weather. The one criticism I will have of all the graphical things that I've seen is the tracks they've scanned, not scanned, reproduced. I don't think they've scanned anything. They do look phenomenal, and when you put them up against the real track, there is stuff in Project Cars that is nowhere to be found in real life. Like I saw a lap at Laguna Seca where there's like boards and trees and stands that have never been there before, and just extra eye candy for the sake of eye candy.
Yeah, it is very much hyped up to kind of like Grand Prix levels of, if F1 came to Laguna Seca, that's kind of what a lot of these Simcade type games kind of replicate, just to make it more visually interesting.
Yeah, like that part of it, like the graphical part, I would have, partly for my processor, but partly for the experience of it, I would rather it be a little closer to what it would be like in real life, as far as the look. That being said, if you just want a game where you can jump into a bunch of cars, have races, either online, have some weather changes, have some experiences that you're not going to get, and honestly you really shouldn't get from the simulation titles, like I said, of course, iRacing, R-Factor, that sort of thing. I think it's for people who own a PC, or actually because it's going to be on the consoles too. Yeah. I think this is this could be the go-to title, especially for the consoles. PCs, yep, for sure, but especially for the consoles, I think this will be the new standard for racing games.
And I'll say this, having of course not driven a lap in it yet because it's not out yet, but just having seen some of the early streamers looks at it and some of the reviews, that I think the term Simcade is spot on for this, because it's not quite at that hardcore simulation level. I wouldn't necessarily call it an arcade type game either, but yeah. I think even though a lot of the hardcore sim racers, the iRacing fanboys and the like, they'll probably have a lot of criticisms for Project Cars, I think a title like this actually has a spot to fill that really there's nothing else out there like it. Whereas, a hardcore sim racer isn't going to be born overnight. They're going to come up through something like a Gran Turismo or a Forza. And I think maybe this could be the next step beyond that. So you do get a pretty big variety of cars, obviously all those tracks as well. So maybe that's the next step in the ladder to get to something like an iRacing or an Assetto Corsa or an R Factor. And Brian, you mentioned the career mode. That's one thing that has me really excited about Project Cars is the idea that you can actually jump in with these different goals. One might be to try to dominate a class over a certain span of years and win all the titles, or one might be to try to get from like a kart level up to running Audis at Le Mans over a few years and try to win that. So I think based on the effort I've seen that they've put into it, that's actually one of the more appealing aspects of it. Are the tracks perfect? I'll say no, because from what I've seen from some of the video, for instance, coming into turn 1 at Watkins Glen, the elevation doesn't look great. Coming down the hill at Bathurst, like through the Dipper and Forest Elbow, isn't quite accurate. But do the differences mean all that much? Someone who just wants to get on and have fun and drive? Probably not. It's going to be close enough that I think if you were to jump into something like an iRacing, having never driven Bathurst or Watkins Glen before, you probably wouldn't be able to tell that big of a difference. And again, the graphics just are astounding with this. So I think that's the eye candy alone is going to be give a little bit of an advantage to the overall look of the tracks.
Yep. The game is developed and I believe published by Slightly Mad Studios. It's available on Steam, and as Brian said, the next-gen consoles, although of course the superior experience will be on PC because you can run higher resolutions than 900p. One of the things that has me really excited is that they actually have day-to-night transitions with 24-hour racing. So there you go.
Yep.
Pay attention, iRacing.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Another game that actually has me pretty intrigued is Dirt Rally, which is, if you are familiar with the Dirt games being developed by Codemasters, this is being pitched by them as a spiritual successor to Richard Burns' Rally and not any of the other previous Dirt games that they've produced. Anyone else intrigued by this?
I am. I'm very intrigued. Now, Codemasters also did back in the day Collin McRae Rally. So that's not near... And I only have brief experience with Richard Burns' Rally. The thing with Collin McRae Rally, and I'm hoping that the level of... And what I've seen so far from the trail, it looks amazing. But what I like about a good rally game, sim, is... unfortunately not having a direct experience with rallying. I mean, I guess not officially anyways, but I have driven on a few dirt roads and whatnot at speed before with that intention in mind while driving. But with decent physics and a decent, and by decent, I'm actually mean a really good co-driver system with decently long and detailed stages, because the experience of rallying, and this is kind of where I think it falls apart for most games. And again, Richard Burns Rally, I know what that was about, and I know it was very moddable and there's a lot you could do with it. But where I think most rally games fall apart is you want to be able to go and have an authentic co-driver experience, because the idea is you're going point to point. You don't have the track memorized exactly. Like, it's too long and it's too hard and the conditions change too much. You need that co-driver, and to actually learn how to do that properly in a game is very satisfying. There's a game called Rally Championship. I think it was released in 1999. It was a very basic game. It looked pretty good, but the co-driver and the length of the stages were all about 10 minutes long, 8 to 12 minutes, like real length stages. The co-driver in that was absolutely unreal, and it's no better feeling than just drilling a stage. You're just looking up ahead of the road, you're listening to what's coming next, and you're just reacting, and you're going through however many miles of road that you've never really seen before at speed, because you're trusting the guy that's, well, in this case, virtually sitting beside you. I'm hoping we can get that experience at a dirt rally.
Yeah, I played Collin McRae Rally for hours and hours and hours growing up. That game was a lot of fun. So if this can sort of duplicate, I guess, the not necessarily immersion, but just the overall feel of being that type of rally driver, then I think it'll be a lot of fun. The impressions I've gotten from the early access is that there's a lot of variety. You get the difference between the gravel on the Greek rally stages versus the tarmac, to the snow and the ice on a Monte Carlo rally, to a lot of different environments. and it looks great from what I've seen. I have heard that there isn't great wheel support yet. Apparently, it's mainly set up for game pads, which I guess isn't too much of a surprise. But again, this is just early access, so I think if they can make it so, I guess it's more welcoming for the true hardcore sim racing type to step in this and get settled in and really feel immersed in it. I think they'll have a winner.
Yeah, I think actually that's the thing about it is not so much. I'm not too concerned about the hardcore sim aspect of it. I want it to feel like I'm in an actual rally. I think Richard Burns' rally was a very closer to a more hardcore sim. Whereas, like I said, I want to sit down and feel like I'm in a rally and not just doing a rally stage like say you can do in Gran Turismo, for instance.
Yeah. And I think that sounds like what they're trying to shoot for. Again, as I said, it is currently available. It means you can play it from Steam Early Access. I think it runs about $30 right now. So if you're interested, check it out. Again, that's published by Codemasters, which is kind of more known for their kind of Simcade, F1, and Dirt games. But this is kind of them returning back to Dirt, their original Dirt roots. So we'll see how it turns out. I'm sure we'll feature it again here on the podcast as we kind of see more of its development and how that translates into maybe what we're hoping the game will be. So that's it. That's all I've got for the sim racing update. Let's move on.
Hey, did you guys hear that? I thought I just heard some thunder. Yeah, I think there's a storm coming in.
I think you're right.
Guys, it's the lightning round. That's right. It's quick succession between Bryan and Anthony as we talk today about the Formula One teams so far this season. We're 4 races into the season, about to head on the European stretch. It's a good time to visit and give report cards to send home. So, Bryan, we'll start at the back of the grid. The Manor Mauritian team didn't even make the grid in the first race at Australia. Since then, they've been there. Unsurprisingly, they've been a couple seconds off the pace, or even more than that, with basically what's last year's package. So, do you think going forward there's any hope of improvement, or maybe even duplicating Bianchi's point in Monaco last year for this team?
It's going to be unlikely. They're talking right now that this Barcelona race is their true first race. I mean, they scrambled together. I mean, they were selling the assets of that play. Like it was being sold. Like Marussia was being sold. So to come back as Manor, and even get. Well, I mean, they weren't on the grid in Australia, but like to get cars on the track in the way they did is impressive. Their pace is slower than it was last year, but surprisingly, they're doing better than I thought they would. We'll see how things go in Barcelona. I think it's unlikely they keep going, but the thing that gets me is if they get their finances sorted, their engineering team there, the team itself, I mean, a lot of highly respected people there, they are doing the best with what they
with
can. With
nothing, essentially.
Yeah, like they are scraping this together. I wish I remember. Like I know, I'm looking at Graham, who's the team. Anyways, they're doing a lot. I don't think they can replicate that because unfortunately, with Jules Bianchi, he was a special talent driver. Like he was carrying that team. It was him and Max Chilton. And I'm sorry, Max Chilton is improving it now. He's a mid-level Indy Lights driver. Like he's not. He's not Formula One quality. He was there for I don't even know where his money was coming from. He looks like Draco Malfoy got an F1 drive. Like it was.
It's a good analogy.
And if anyone who's out there and doesn't know who Max Chilton is, look up Max Chilton. Then just Google Draco Malfoy and tell me I'm wrong.
Yep.
Because I'm not. The guy who played Malfoy looks less like Malfoy than Chilton does. Anyways, I've gone off the rails here. But I think a lot of the success too is Bianchi was carrying that team, and I mean, for more reasons than I can get into, what happened to Suzuka was just absolutely heartbreaking. But it's the fact, and even if they don't finish up the season, the fact that they got back this year on the grid and are doing anything at all, it speaks a lot for those guys there. Back to Persia, I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they'll finish up the season. Unfortunately, they might finish up the season. I don't think they have a future necessarily in Formula One, but I have all the respect in the world for those guys.
Yep, they get an A for effort from me.
Oh yeah, sorry, Anthony.
Oh, all I had to add to that was they get an A for effort from me.
Absolutely. So there is one other team at the back of the grid with them that hasn't scored points this season. This one's probably a little more surprising. That's the McLaren team. So I think we all expected there'd be some growing pains when they went back to the Honda engine this year. Maybe not quite as much as they've had so far. Fortunately, the reliability has been a little bit better. But Anthony, what do you expect of McLaren going forward now, especially as you hit first Alonso's home race and then some more of the European races where historically he and Jenson Button have done pretty well?
Yeah. We've been promised by the team that major updates are coming once they get back to Europe. So Barcelona will be kind of, let's see if they can keep their word. I'm actually a little surprised that they were so far behind. I was expecting Honda to be a little bit further than where they were at. I do kind of get that, it's a very technical engine and all of that, but I was expecting Honda to be a little further along. Honestly, they'll be very happy if they could score 10 points this season, I believe. From what we see right now, if their upgrades are as good as they're promising in their press conferences, maybe it'll be a different story. But right now, I think they should be happy for 10 points by the end of the season.
I think they're shooting for the moon is what's going on right now, and it's the improvement from Australia through the first two rounds where they basically have no opportunity for development. They're just refining what they have and trying to make what they have work. Is encouraging in a way. It was surprising how far they were at the beginning, but I think what Honda's done technically with that engine made it very difficult for them to get off on the right foot. They're either going to, by the end of this year, the beginning of next year, be right on pace and challenging, or this whole thing could go to hell in a head. It could go both ways. Like Anthony says, if they get 10 points this year, they'll be happy. But I think the potential for great things from that team is definitely there, but the potential, the whole thing could just go right in the tank, is also there as well. So we'll see.
So right now, 8 in constructors' points is the Force India team. This one also may be a little surprised. They're so far down with Mercedes power, and they finally had Nico Hülkenberg. He's in the same ride 2 years in a row. So, Ryan, this one's for you. How do you grade the Force India team so far, and what do you expect from Hülkenberg and Perez going forward?
Well, as far as those two drivers there, honestly, Perez has I think Hülkenberg is the more solid driver. Perez has a ton of potential and a few kind of racing judgment errors, I will call them. He is amazing at managing tires, and both of those guys are skilled enough to will be putting the car where the car deserves to be. I think they've done a really good job, but the thing with Force India, and I think this really highlights the financial issues that F1 is facing right now, and people are saying, well, if teams can't cut it and make the money or whatever, then they shouldn't be in F1. But Force India is a team that's they're never a top-level team, but in 2012, there's times when they're running up front and on merit. The reason that they're having issues right now, and it's not something that was as known until relatively recently, is the unbelievably high cost of these new hybrid engines. Their customer team, they're basically leasing these Mercedes engines, and that takes up so much of their budget that it's hard for them to do anything either. So the fact that they're still, in cases, performing at a competitive point scoring pace, just barely right now, is relatively impressive. And I think that if these regs stay for a little bit longer, they can come back. Right now, I think as far as the team's going, unfortunately, because of those issues, they're definitely underperforming than where I expected them to be. The drivers, on their hand, I don't see them doing anything different than they have when they've been successful, so I don't pin this on the drivers at all.
So if there's one team so far this season that you might say, oh man, what might have been, it's probably the Toro Rosso team, because especially when you look back at Melbourne, between Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, they both had a great race going. Had some problems, only came away with 2 points there. Did a little bit better in Malaysia and got 10 points between them, but since then, no points at all. So, Anthony, this one's for you. What do you make of these two rookies for the Toro Rosso team and basically what was a complete overhaul of their lineup?
Interesting. I think that the drivers have, for the most part, kind of shown that they do deserve the cars that they're in. We have seen a few points during some of the opening races that kind of a little questionable, but, it's good and aggressive, which everyone likes to see, so I don't really have a problem with it. I think this team has had a lot of potential to do much better than they are this season, but they've been like their parent team, but let down by Renault and their power unit. So, and also they seem to be, for whatever reason, a lot more unreliable than the mother team as well, for whatever reason. I'm not exactly sure the explanation behind that, but yeah, I think that if they can get the power unit sorted as much as it can be, I'm not sure where Renault is going with that, but if they can get that and kind of tighten down some of their reliability issues, I think the team could be up regularly competing for around, the top 5 or maybe a couple place or two above sometimes. When they are able to put a lap together and they're able to kind of, run full out, they seem to be up around that. I mean, it's qualifying, they've been kind of the lower half, but we've seen flashes where I've felt that they could be top 5. So sort out reliability, sort out the power unit, and they'll have some really quick drivers and quick cars.
So speaking of power unit, the next team we'll talk about actually switched units in the offseason. The Lotus team went from Renault to Mercedes, but maybe doing a little bit better this season. Of course, Maldonado is going to Maldonado, but the last couple of races, Roman Grosjean's actually scored some points. So, Brian, what do you think about the European stretch coming where historically Grosjean's done a little bit better? Do you think Lotus can keep tacking on some more points, and what do you make of Maldonado?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to apologize to anyone listening out there. This is the lightning round, and this is our first podcast, and we're really tanking the lightning part of this. So I'm going to start to speed this up here. As far as Maldonado is concerned, and the Lotus side, just when the guy gives you hope, he goes and, as you say, he Maldonados. And he just, it's terrible. Like it's so frustrating to watch. He's got so much. He's a race winner. He is the worst race winner I've ever seen in F1. Grosjean, on the other hand, I do expect a lot coming from this year. It looks like they've got that package tightened up. They're starting to get used to Mercedes. They sorted out the financial issues, and I see Grosjean taking that team forward this year.
I also just want to give Grosjean a shout out because he's really won me over after those a few appalling races. I think they were in 2013, 2012. Yeah.
He hit everything.
After he kind of went away for a little bit and then came back. He really won me over. So I'm really happy that he's kind of taking the leadership position of that team, and I'm hoping he does well.
So if there was one probably feel-good story from the first 4 races, it may have been from Melbourne with the Sauber team. It didn't do anything last year, and suddenly they were in the points. Actually finished pretty well in Australia. So, Anthony, this one's for you. Nasser and Ericsson behind the wheel. Sauber's dropped off a little bit, but still scored some points in China. So, basically one of the second-tier teams that's showing the way so far. What do you make of these guys?
I'm pretty impressed with what they've been able to do with the car, as ugly as the thing is. Driver-wise, that should be indicative of what my thoughts are. They seem to have, there is speed there, which I'll definitely give them that. They have speed there. I don't think that they really know how to use it effectively. I remember thinking, I think it was the second race of the season, second or third race. I forget which one it was, but they were making these crazy dive passes and stuff like this that was really kind of, I wasn't sure if I agreed with or not, but I just remember thinking after about the first 10 or 15 laps, wow, this is the most unprofessional F1 race I've seen in a long time. And I think that was mostly down to those 2 drivers. So I think they need to get some more experience under their belts and kind of get a feel for F1. There definitely is speed there. Like I said, I'll give them that. They just need to kind of get used to the whole scene. And this isn't GP2 as much as they seem to think it is. So we'll see how it goes. I'm kind of undecided on those 2 guys so far.
Yeah, I just want to quickly jump in there. As you just mentioned at the beginning, Sauber's a feel-good story. I would disagree with that 100%. I lost so much respect for that team this year.
After their legal battle, yeah, I have to say, yeah.
Yeah, they funded their effort on the promises made and money, and extreme amounts of money given to them, saying by Vandergaard in particular, and then also by Simona Di Silvestro, brought a ton of money into that team, got nothing out of it. Adrian Sutil had, pretty much, airtight contract. I don't know what money he brought in. He just drove the car fast. and they funded their team on other people's promises. Peter Sauber, a lot of respect. He's brought since 1993 the regime they have in there right now, and I'm sure they're holding on. But I don't. Sorry, that Sauber's kind of dead to me now.
I'll take a quick aside. I just want a quick yes or no from both of you. Would Sauber be better off with Vandegaard or De Silvestro instead of Marcus Ericsson? Bryan?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Anthony?
Yes, Vandergaard should be in the car.
There you have it. So we'll move on to the Red Bull team. Last year, Ricciardo won some races, was looking pretty promising. Not so much so far this year. He's got a couple sixth-place finishes. And Danny Kvyat, where has he been? He's got a couple nights to show for being at the top Red Bull team now. So, Bryan, what's Red Bull got to look forward to, and what do they have to improve on going forward?
They need two things. They need that Renault engine to stop grenading itself, as well as doing what it's supposed to be doing, as in putting the power down in a stable manner and not braking and powering up just the way it feels like. I don't know what they did to that engine this year, but it is messed up and it is not working with that Renault, with the Red Bull chassis. Ricciardo doing what he can. Kvyat, also, I'm surprisingly impressed with him in a way. He has suffered more technically and has had more issues than I think we forgot since Sainz Jr. and Verstappen are in F1 now. He's still 20 years old or 21 years old. He's still a kid, basically. Yeah. Now he's got one season under his belt and he's in the Red Bull, the four-time world champion Red Bull. It's a turd. It's a terrible car this year. Nothing is working together, and they have to wait till next year before that gets sorted out. So hopefully those guys can hold on.
So next in the lineup is the Williams team. Actually doing pretty respectable so far with Bottas and Massa. Right now third in the constructors standings with 61 points. Seems like last year and so far this year they're about the only team that can even come close to challenging Mercedes, at least in qualifying. So Anthony, now Williams, Mercedes powered. Can they take the fight back to Mercedes in the European stretch?
Don't forget Ferrari.
No, I don't think they can. And I actually think I'm going to agree with Ron Dennis on something and say that you can't beat a factory team when you're using their engines, or however he said that. I don't think that unless Mercedes, for some reason, really screws up their development, I don't think that they're going to be able to beat them. They might be able to get close to kind of bother them, but Williams this season has not taken the leaps that I would have expected them to stay consistent with the Mercedes factory team, and instead Ferrari has made those steps. So really, I think that Williams will be able to they're playing catch up right now. I think that they'll probably be able to catch up to the back of those cars, but really, I think all they'll be able to do is kind of secure their third spots on the grid and kind of get themselves back away, or get in front of the kind of the riffraff that's going on behind them.
And don't worry, Bryan, I didn't forget Ferrari. They're next in the lineup. Actually, it seems like they've had the race pace versus Williams so far this year, and also the strategy that's played out pretty well. So Vettel's already got a win. Do you think he can get another one in the next 3 to 4 races? And how do you think Kimi Räikkönen will do coming off his second place in Bahrain?
I think both of them will do fine. And in fact, I'd say in the next, call it 5 races, the next few, I bet you'll see, I wouldn't be surprised if you see both a Vettel and a Räikkönen win in there. Trying to think of what naturally, later in the year, I'm pretty sure that I'm almost guaranteed that assuming the car finishes, Räikkönen will win in Belgium. He owns that track. That's his place. With a decent car, he's going to win that race. But the next few races here, I wouldn't be surprised to see 1 or 2 Ferrari wins. I don't think Mercedes has the... Last year, they were riding so high in their technical advantage that I don't think they know how to handle that, but they're not as dominant right now. They're still holding on to a little bit, but as well as they're doing, I don't believe in their professionalism, be it from Hamilton, from Rosberg, from the management there. I don't think that, I think basically coming back to the Ferrari point, I think that Ferrari right now, the Ferrari team this year, is night and day from where they were last year, and I think they are a real strong threat now, not going forward now.
That's a good segue to the last one. The Mercedes team, Anthony, has so far won 3 of the 4 races. Hamilton's beat Rosberg every race. So how long can Hamilton keep this going? And what's going through Rosberg's mind now? Head back into Europe. Knows he's got to try to beat his teammate soon if he's going to have any hope of the championship.
Yeah, Rosberg really can't do anything right at the moment. He tried playing the nice guy and was kind of criticized for that. He tried playing the bad guy, was criticized for that. And then he decided to blame the way that race cars work that he couldn't win a race. So, he really needs to, well, I think right now, to beat Hamilton, he needs to out-qualify him at some point, because apparently if Hamilton's in front of him, he can't pass him. So, really, that right now, Mercedes, like Bryan said, they only just have a slight advantage over Ferrari. Right now, Hamilton's, despite that diminishing advantage, still seems to be pretty comfortable out in front. He's really on the ball right now, and unless something kind of drastic happens, I think he's going to be able to ride his current momentum well into the middle of the season, depending on what Ferrari can throw at them. I mean, if Ferrari starts getting a couple wins in, that confidence is then shaken and thrown out the window. But really, I think that Mercedes needs to sort out their management and kind of have I thought they were really great with Ross Brawn at the helm. And now they have definitely 2 people trying to lead the team, probably 2 or 3 more people that we don't see in the press coverage all that often that are pulling strings. They need to kind of get that sorted out and have a unified leader. That might work well for Mercedes as a company. I don't think a board-style leadership works all that great for an F1 racing team.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're having success, and you saw it last year. The moment they didn't go right. I'm going to go back to Spa of last year, which is where I really think it came apart. Is Rosberg made a stupid move on Hamilton. They came together. He broke his wing. Hamilton's tire got punctured. It was bound to happen. They were racing close. And the reaction that they got from the team about how unacceptable it was, if they had just said, you know what, it was racing incident, we'll deal with it, we'll move on, we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. They lost their minds. They were freaking out in the press. They were calling people out. Hamilton's calling out Rosberg in the press. Wolff's calling out everyone. Lotta's, I don't know, we roughed some guy up in the corner. It was for a team that was dominating that much the entire season, it was an extreme reaction. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that happens this year, as soon as it gets to be where, they're fighting, and I don't know what, just the management side. I mean, those drivers, Hamilton in particular will go out. Rosberg is fast enough to do it, but I don't know what's going on with that. Yeah. But it's the team itself needs to be able to come together. I don't think they have it.
Quick question: would Spa have happened under Ross Brawn?
Would Spa have happened under Ross Brawn?
Yeah.
That's the part that I'm not sure, and this is my thought on the thing too. Is I don't think it would have got to that point, because I think what happened was they let them race to a point, and I think there was one too many. Rosberg should have known how Hamilton drives and tried to adjust accordingly. I think Rosberg up to that point was trying to be accommodating, and then he tried to be tough, and he was terrible at it, and he ran into him. I don't think it would have got to the point where Rosberg felt that frustrated to do something that stupid if Ross Brawn had been there. So I guess that's my answer.
Okay, fair.
I think the storm has passed. That'll do it for the lightning round. We're heading into the final lap of the show with previews and predictions. So on the topic of F1, let's talk about Barcelona coming up next weekend. There's a track where Hamilton won last year. The year before that, it was Alonso, and Ferrari basically wore out the tires, made multiple pit stops, and Alonso still won. The year before that, it was Maldonado. So we've seen some surprises here. What do you guys think we're going to see coming up next weekend?
I really hope beyond hope that one of these days that Barcelona will no longer be in the race that longer. As an F1 track, it is so bad. It's a bad track. For some reason, that turn 3, I don't know what it is about that corner, but all it does is, at best, it destroys the tires and makes the racing interesting, because drivers can't manage their tires. So that one corner, if someone manage a little bit better, you might get some good racing. But all that was ever good about that track was the last couple corners, barreling onto the front straightaway, and now they have they don't even have that anymore. They have a chicane down there. It's just I, as far as my prediction for the race, I hope that something happens like rain that makes it interesting.
Yeah, we haven't had a good rain race in a long time. We've had times where it's rained and then they've sent the safety car out. Although I guess the last time we had a solid rain race, we had a terrible accident. So maybe that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
My thoughts on the race at Barcelona would be, I'm like Bryan said, it's not a great like racing track. So I am interested to see all of the performance upgrades that the teams are bringing now that we're back to Europe, and I want to see kind of where all of these updates are going to place everyone. If things stay mostly the same, or if we're going to have a couple teams jumping or falling down depending on those updates. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, and then we can kind of get into the more exciting races in Europe.
Yeah, unless something drastic changes, I think if anyone's going to beat Mercedes, it's going to have to be on strategy. So far, Ferrari's basically been the only one that can do that. So I'd look for that to still be the battle at the front, but Mercedes, I think, at least for the next few races, is still going to be the odds-on favorites by far. So also coming up next weekend, IndyCar heads to the road course in Indianapolis for the Grand Prix inaugural event last year, won by Simon Pagenaud. So how about it, guys? What do you think we'll see? The road course last year was fairly racy, still about what you'd expect from a pretty flat track laid out in the infield of the Speedway.
Yeah, I like the circuit. I like the racing there. I mean, like I say, it's not nothing special, but it's in Indianapolis, and I remember watching Formula One there back in the day. I do like the layout of the track better than what they used to have for Formula One. It does promote a little bit more racing. It's had a few more like higher speed sections because the last little bit was extremely, I hate using the term, but it was Mickey Mouse. It was a series of first gear hairpins that really didn't do anything for the racing. No, it looks pretty good. It's honestly, it's the way IndyCar is going right now. It is a good lead-in to the month of May to kind of really package it together, do the race, come back, convert it back over to the oval, get into the oval practice, the qualifying, and then the race, and have a good solid month of racing to kind of highlight IndyCar.
I think last year this race was pretty much the classic willpower mistake race. Nicky ran over an air hose in the pit stop, and that pretty much thwarted any good finish he was going to have. So, and that's sort of been the case this year too. I think if Power beats himself, then he's not going to be a contender. But I think if he can run a mistake-free race, he's got to be one of the favorites, especially this year with how the Penske cars and the Chevys are going.
Yeah, honestly, there's nothing I like more, and I not like it because I like to see him do well. I like Will Power, but there's nothing funnier to me than the Will Power interview after a race where things have not gone right. Just that, oh man, it was like just that kind of, like he gets that sort of wide-eyed. He's like, I don't know where I am. I don't know what's happened. Who are you people? Something has gone wrong. It's such a. He seems like, you know, that Dave's Not Here bit from Cheech and Chong back in the day. Oh, you guys are a lot younger than I am, and even that was before my time. But that's the kind of feeling I get, is like someone's asking for Dave. He's like, Dave's not here, man. Who's Will? Like, what's going on? I was in a race car and stuff happened. I don't know. It was like I ran over an air hose or whatever. Someone stopped in front of me. I think I went backwards somewhere. I don't know what happened. I hit 3 guys. Like, he just seems so confused about events. Like he's one of the most talented race car drivers in the world. But when it goes wrong, it's like, I bit what? Who?
So next weekend, NASCAR heads to Kansas on Saturday night. Last year it was Jeff Gordon that won, but Kevin Harvick led the most laps. Do you care, and do you have a prediction, Anthony?
Not really, but I'm actually kind of interested that the people that I knew or know from NASCAR, being Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr., those guys are still racing, and apparently they're still winning. So I find that interesting, because I knew them back from when I used to play NASCAR Thunder 2003 on the GameCube. That's why I know them. So
Excellent.
There you go. Corey, why are you excited for this race? Let's ask someone that regularly watches. Why are you excited for this race?
I'm not, because I think Kansas is pretty much the epitome of one of the big problems of NASCAR now, and that's basically these cookie-cutter mile-and-a-half tracks that's been recently repaved. It's just not conducive to great racing, basically on that smooth track, especially when they'll be there at night. The cars have so much grip and they're so fast. And this year, even though they took away a little downforce, they also took away horsepower. So the cars are going to be almost wide open all the way around there. That's just not a recipe for good racing in any series, but especially not stock cars. So this is one where I don't care if I don't watch the first 200 laps. I might watch the finish. I might go to sleep before then. I'll see who wins the next morning.
Oh, NASCAR. Yeah, when you have spread out cars when they're meant to be close and touching each other, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, I don't really have Kansas. Like, I honestly don't know that track. Like, it's just one of those, like, I mean, like you say, it's a cookie cutter mile and a half.
Yeah.
And, like, to me, not being a regular NASCAR follower, me having from The Sims, from watching when I do, like, the big races, to me, NASCAR it's Charlotte, it's Bristol, it's Daytona, it's Talladega.
Either the really big tracks or the short ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as terrible as the road course is at Kansas, where basically all it is turning in on the infield, making a hairpin turn, and coming back on the racetrack, this race would be a lot more exciting if they actually ran the road course.
All right, there you go, NASCAR. That's what you need to do.
Formula E heads to Monaco, Monte Carlo this weekend. A little bit of a prelude maybe to F1 there. So, Brian, what do we need to know about this
one? I'm honestly really big on Formula E, and my thing is first thing, Monaco in particular. I'm going to be really curious to see, because they don't run the full track. They're going to cut off down, instead of going up the hill towards Casino Square, they're going to cut down the other hill down towards where the Nouveau Chicane is, coming out of the tunnel. They're not going to use the tunnel, unfortunately, because what's the point? They're electric cars. They're not going to make any cool noises. So they're going to turn short there, still go to the swimming pool, still use Rascasse and Anthony Nose and Saint Deveau and all that. Great location. But as far as the series goes, the thing that I like about Formula E is it's surprisingly entertaining. You have to get over the fact that this is a different kind of racing. It's not going to replace Formula One. It's not going to replace any kind of series. The thing that got me into motorsport was two things. It was the speed of Indianapolis. It was the speed of cars, Formula One cars in particular, at Monaco and other places, just being on the limit of that technology. But the actual quality of racing in Formula E has been fantastic. The strategy of Formula E is fantastic. The presentation of what you're watching is unparalleled. And if IndyCar had a tenth of that, it would make it so much better. You know exactly. They need to manage their energy. Right now, I mean, the swapping of car things is kind of an interesting gimmick, but it kind of works because you have two sections of the race and they pretty much split it up. So you can bank your energy and go faster later, but you're going to have to drop back at the beginning, and really balancing that out. It's really had some guys making a charge late in the race, really kind of pacing themselves ahead, but then having to back off the energy and having guys come back to them. And being a new technology, the actual strategy being used is so clearly displayed graphically that you can see exactly how much energy people have. They can see exactly how much horsepower, if you will, the kilowatts or whatever, that they're running on those cars at any one time through the onboards. The timing is fantastic. All that is, it makes it very compelling for what it is. And then on top of that, it's been such a long time, and it's been, I mean, yeah, sure, certain technologies have come out of Formula One, and yes, they're using hybrid energy now, but that was forced upon F1. It wasn't created by F1, it was forced upon F1. Yeah. Same even with Le Mans is interesting. I love the technology of Le Mans because they opened it up a lot more. But electric cars, that's the next big thing, and it's going to be opening up manufacturers shortly over the next few years once they start opening it up. That's where the technology in racing is going to come from. They're going to be developing the electronic technology and showcasing it through Formula E, and that's where the cutting edge of showing, you know, what cars, what can be done, what it's a new technology. It's not motor racing in the traditional sense where you rush into the fences like, oh my God, what was that noise? That was amazing. It's going to be in such a way that, hey, this is our company, this is the technology we have, you could buy this for your own car. Yeah. Come see what we do on the racetrack. Like that's what I feel is going to come back with Formula E. And I just stunned you all into silence. That was
yeah, and that's sort of how I feel about this, is silence. I'm just not sure how to feel yet. It hasn't hooked me yet. And I watched the opening race of the series, I guess it was in China last year, even with some really exciting racing and a really good finish, that didn't hook me. And since then, it's not that I've lost interest or that I've given up on it. It just hasn't hooked me yet. So maybe if all these developments come and you really do get that close involvement with some of the manufacturers, maybe that'll step it up. But I really thought that with a series where you have some of the big names that are running in it, and with a lot of what we would expect to be really close competition that I haven't gotten more involved yet. But again, I just haven't quite gotten that urge to really get into it yet.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that most of it is I kind of had low expectations of it as far as the racing side. And the racing side has somewhat surprised me. But the one thing as far as getting into it, I know I posted about this possibly on my blog, but at Long Beach, when keep in mind, Bruno Senna and Nicholas Prost, both nephew of Ayrton Senna and son of Alain Prost, Senna came out of the pits and Prost was battling at him, and the announcer said, "It's Senna versus Prost," and I lost my mind. Like, I was just like, oh my god, that was like the best thing I've ever heard. It's like, it's been 20 years on like that. It's like, okay, for no other reason, I have to like the series because you had that. And then also Long Beach, Nelson Piquet Jr. won. Like, the names are there. It's not, as long as my point of view, and I totally get what Corey says, because that was kind of my thing. Like, I don't think it's possible for the people, motorsport fans, to get hooked on it that way. But it's different. And
yeah.
Actually, the one thing I'll say, and why I make it say it's different too, is you can't think of it as motorsport in that sense, because I know it's going to sound weird, but maybe not. I watch, drugs aside, I'll watch the Tour de France. I love watching the Tour de France, watching these guys bike through, and they're just biking in a pack, and they keep the times, like who's pushing ahead, who's doing what. Like, it's not the speed of that, obviously. They're biking. Like, I mean, it's like you can at times run faster than them, especially when they're going uphill. Same thing with something like the America's Cup sailing. Technically, it's very interesting. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen that, but like, I'm interested in seeing the technology used there. And again, you're not watching it because of the speed. I mean, like, sometimes it's just painfully slow, but you're still kind of following along in that technology. If you don't think of Formula E as you're watching motorsports, it sounds really strange to you, but you're not. It's just a different thing. Like, it's not car racing. It's not bike racing. It's just different.
Yep.
That's why I enjoy it.
It's a completely new. Well, yeah, it's almost kind of like a completely new product or experience that they are trying to give to, well, you want to say traditional motorsports fans, but really they're trying to just say, here's this new thing we created. It's based on upcoming technology that we think will be a major part of your lives in the near future. Here's something interesting that we're doing with it, in addition to kind of helping the development of that technology. So it is kind of it's an interesting sell to some people. If you're looking for, Formula One, you're definitely not going to get that. If you're kind of looking for something a little bit new and maybe a little bit weird at first, it's something that you should definitely check out. And really, it's something that you should at least keep an eye on and see what some of the developments are, because this kind of electric power for cars is kind of evolving rapidly now, as there's kind of a push for it, especially with Elon Musk and Tesla and all of that developments that they're working on. So as it starts becoming more and more in the consumer market, we might see more and more developments in like motorsport and with Formula E, or if there's maybe a competing series or something like that down the line. So it's definitely something to at least keep an eye on and kind of know vaguely what's going on with it.
Yeah, Brian, I think I just had an epiphany with your comparison to sailing, because I've tried to get into the America's Cup stuff before. I've watched that, and I had the same feeling about that, and I guess there's some similarities. It's slow, it's strategic, it's quiet, and if Nick Heidfeld is there, he might end up in the harbor at Monaco.
Oh, that's harsh. Poor Nick.
All right, well, everyone, guys, that is basically our show for today. I think we ran way longer than we were expecting to, but, that's how these things go. Yeah.
We'll tighten it up.
So, anything that you guys want to plug yourselves with? No, that came out wrong. Anything, any of your things, anything that you want to plug, like visit this or check this out, something like that.
I really don't know now. You know what? The only thing I can think of right now is, aside from the stuff we talked about, our sim racing that we've been doing. It kind of during the summer months, that kind of takes a back seat because that's more of a a fall and winter thing, so I don't really, aside from obviously this is going to be on the RevLimit.com. I mean, keep coming back, I guess. We'll have more stuff.
Yeah, I'd say stay tuned. It's coming in. I mean, we're in probably the greatest racing month of the year now, with especially the end of the month with the Memorial Day weekend coming up. Not long after that, we'll have Le Mans. So this summer stretch is going to be awesome. So stay tuned.
All right, everyone here is on Twitter if you want to follow us. I know personally, mine is at Tweets by Ant. I don't know if you specifically only want motorsport stuff. You probably shouldn't follow me because I tweet a lot of tech industry stuff in addition to racing and stuff like that. So, but if you want, at Tweets by Ant for me. Brian, I think yours is at Rev Limit Brian, I think.
Yep, that's Brian with a Y, and I only tweet about racing stuff.
There you go.
Unless I see something really funny, like really funny.
And Corey, I'm very sorry. I know yours is at CX Davis or something like that. What's your Twitter handle?
Yeah, close enough. I'm at CDavisWX. I put a lot of sim racing stuff on there, real racing stuff. I'll try to follow Brian's footsteps with the funny stuff, but I'm sure he's got the edge there.
It's mostly motorsport stuff.
Yep. And I know actually Corey does do a blog kind of related to sim racing and stuff that he's currently doing in sim racing. So I believe he usually tweets that out. So if you follow him, you can take a look at his escapades and stuff like that. And of course, follow the Rev Limit at the Rev Limit. Easy enough. And if you haven't bookmarked the website, do it now. Do it now.
Yep,
that's it.
Facebook, everything. Join the face group.
Yep, it's all on there. Group. Share it. And also, since this is the first podcast, you feel free to leave some constructive feedback on how we can tighten things up. And
the lightning round will be shorter.
Brian won't take 5 minutes on a lightning round question next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's it. Thanks for watching or listening to the first episode. We'll see you next time.